Welcome to Part 5 of the Argumentative Research Unit with English 1010E at Southern Utah University. For the past several weeks, you've been working on argumentative research on the topic of technology and the problems associated with technology use. And in the first week, you wrote a problem paper with your team, and then for weeks 3 and 4, you shifted topics. So if I were in Team C, we wrote about information sources for the first couple weeks, and then we shifted to writing about social media. Now for the solutions paper part for weeks 5 and 6, my Team C, we're going to write about online entertainment. So pay attention to how your topic has shifted, and you'll learn about something new by reading the papers of your peers. So our focus for this last part, Team B will work on social media, Team C on online entertainment, and Team A will focus on information sources. So for the first couple weeks, you focused on the right side of this diagram, describing the problem and its negative effects. For the second part with the causes paper, you quickly summarized the right part, but then you focused more on the left part of the diagram. What are the main causes that are creating the problem? What's the background situation in which this problem exists? For the solutions paper, we now want to focus on how we're going to solve this problem. Now, sometimes when people approach a solution to a problem, what they're doing is they're just addressing the symptoms or the effects. So imagine someone going to the doctor and they've had a really bad runny nose, maybe a cough, but they're having trouble breathing. They go to the doctor and they explain, "Doctor, I'm feeling really bad and these are the things that are happening to me." And the doctor says, "Oh, I've got an easy solution to that." She gives you some medicine, you take the medicine, and you no longer feel the runny nose or the headache. But after a few weeks, the medicine runs out, and now the headache and the runny nose are back again. That's what happens when we create solutions that only address the effects. So in this case, if you were to write a solution paper that only addressed the effects, you'd just talk about how to stop the bad negative effects from happening again. We sometimes call that a band-aid solution, meaning it's just addressing the effects. It's not addressing the causes. Let's imagine a new situation. You go back to the doctor, but this time you get a different doctor. You explain the same problem again. "I'm having a runny nose. I'm having bad headaches." And the doctor, instead of giving you a solution right away, asks you more questions. When did this start happening? Where does it happen? How often does it happen? And as the doctor asks more questions, the doctor understands what the real cause is. The cause is that you are allergic to something, and you've recently been exposed to that repeatedly. And as long as you are exposed to that, you're going to keep having these symptoms. So the doctor tells you, "You know what? You can take this medicine, it'll stop the headaches and the runny nose, but you also need to change maybe your environment. Maybe you have a job where you have to interact with something that makes you sick." And the doctor says, "Talk to your boss and see if you can change your job responsibilities so that you're no longer exposed to this chemical or this environment that makes you sick." So in this case, the doctor is proposing a solution that addresses both the short-term effects, the immediate problem, but also is trying to address the causes so that the problem doesn't happen again in the future. So that's what you want to be able to do with your causes paper. You want to describe causes that are good at solving the effects, but also solutions that are good at solving the effects, but also solutions that are good at addressing the causes. So in your solution paper, you're going to spend the introduction summarizing the problem, its negative effects, and the main causes. Then you want to identify and evaluate the solutions. And as always, you'll use sources to support your explanations. So for each of those solutions, you want to clearly identify the solution, explain how that solution would work. Okay? How does this solution fix the problem? And you'll need to evaluate its effectiveness. Is it a solution that addresses the effects? Does it also address one or more of the causes? What are the costs involved? Does it take time? Is it a short term or long term? Is this something sustainable that someone could continue doing, whether it's a student or the parents or teachers or society or a school? And how popular is the solution? Are people going to like it, or are they going to be upset with it? Are there side effects of the solution, meaning the solution, does it create new problems? So those are the kinds of things you need to evaluate. We'll have a couple solution papers for you to look at. Neither one of them is going to be a perfect paper, but by looking at these sample solution papers, you'll be able to recognize different strengths and weaknesses in a solution paper, so that hopefully you can take those ideas to write the best paper that you can do. Let's also take a little bit of time now to talk about some argumentative research skills. And specifically, we want to focus on the idea of evaluating sources. This is a really important skill, not only for university study, but really for life. There are many ways to evaluate sources, but let's just look at two dimensions right now, or two factors. One of them is the author. Is the author an expert at the top of our diagram, or is the author an amateur? An amateur means someone who's not an expert. They don't know very much about the topic yet. Then we also want to look at who is the intended audience. What's the purpose of this source? And that's what we see along the horizontal axis. Is this source on the right for a general audience, people who don't know much about the topic, or is it for an academic audience on the left, people who are experts and who expect to see citations and references in their writing? So let's look at some sources and how they might fit on this diagram. So if we think about a newspaper article is often written by a journalist, so they're not a total amateur probably in the topic, but they may not be an expert either. So in general, we might think a newspaper article kind of fits in the middle there. And is it an academic audience or a general audience? It can depend on the newspaper publication. Some of them are written for a very general audience. Some of them are a little bit more towards the middle. But on average, newspaper articles are somewhere near the middle of our diagram. We recently just watched TED Talks. TED Talks tend to be given by speakers who are experts in their topic. Not always, but they're a little more expert than an amateur. So we'll put them a little bit higher. And they do tend to be written for a more general audience. So they're expecting that the people who are listening to the talk don't know very much about the topic. So they fit a little bit more maybe in the general audience category. What about a textbook for school? Especially a university textbook is almost always written by an expert in the topic. So we're going to put it higher on our diagram. And they tend to be written more for an academic audience. There's more likely to be things like footnotes or references. They expect the audience to have a little more background in the topic. So we're going to put textbook over in that part of the diagram. Academic journal articles. These are kind of like magazines written by experts for experts. There's lots of references in these, and unless you are an expert in the topic, you could have a lot of difficulty understanding these articles. So that's where we'll put them up highest in our diagram. They're great sources of academic information, but they're very difficult for students to use unless those students have been studying that topic for quite a while. Down here in the bottom, for the general audience and amateur, we have things like opinion blogs, social media posts. These are often by people who are not experts in the topic. They're not providing sources or referencing. They're just sharing opinions. These might be interesting, but they are not good sources for academic writing. They're often not supported by good references. So do we have anything in this bottom left category where something is for an academic audience, but it's written by someone who's not an expert in the topic? We do have something. That's what you've been doing. Student academic papers are what fit in there. We're not experts on the topic yet, but we're learning to write for an academic audience. We include things like citations, referencing. We use sources to support our ideas. So as we work as students, we want to get things that are written as much as possible by experts and for an academic audience. but sometimes it's harder to read those sources, so we might use things sometimes like newspaper articles and TED Talks to get our information. But we almost always would avoid opinion blogs, social media posts, unless there's a good reason to use them to show people's opinions. They're not good, reliable sources. Now, we've only looked at two dimensions of evaluating sources. We looked at authority, so who is the author? Are they an expert or not? We also looked at the purpose. Who's the intended audience? Is this for a general or academic population? Other things we could consider is the currency. Now, currency can mean money, but in this case, currency means how current or how new is the information. What is the date? Is this a really old article or a really new one? We also look at relevancy. How well does it relate to our topic? Is the information pertinent or important for what we're describing? And the accuracy. How much can we trust this information? How true and correct is it? Those are all important things we need to consider when we use sources. And certainly when, or even in social media, when you share information with others on the internet, you should think about those factors or dimensions of evaluating sources. If something isn't reliable and accurate, maybe we shouldn't be sharing it. So this week you're going to focus on your solutions research matrix. You're going to read 2 of your classmates' papers at least. You'll read one of your classmates' effects papers about the new topic and a classmate's causes paper about the new topic. And you'll be able to use that information to help you summarize the problem and effects as well as the causes. Now, of course, you can use other sources to help you summarize effects and causes as well. You could look at the works cited page of your classmates and read those papers. But at the minimum, you need to read 2 classmates' papers. Then you'll use sources to help you better understand the solutions. So let's say I read source number 1 about my new topic, and it gives me information about one solution. So I'm going to write it on my research matrix, solution 1, and I'm going to give it a name, whatever it is. Maybe the solution is better sleep or something. I'm going to call it X here in my diagram. And then I write a summary in that cell, in that box, that describes what source 1 said about sleeping. Then I go to read source 2. Source 2 doesn't talk about solution X. Instead, it talks about solution Y. So I write about solution Y in its column, in a different place. Then I read source 3. It talks about the first solution, solution X. It doesn't talk about solution Y, but it talks about solution Z. And so I write information in that box. And what I'm seeing here is that I've got at least 2 sources to support solution X. 1 source for solution Y, 1 source for solution Z. I may want to see if I can find additional sources, especially to have more support for solution Y and solution Z. If you use your research matrix in this way to help organize the different solutions, it will be much easier to write your outline. So don't just put everything in the first column as soon as you read it. If it doesn't connect to the solution from a previous source, use a new column, and that will better organize your information. So in summary, this week you need to read your peers' papers about your new topic, an effects paper and a causes paper. You also want to read at least a minimum of 3 other sources about your new topic, and you want to identify solutions. Record that information in your research matrix. Once you're done and you've completed the research matrix, please submit it through Canvas. Please contact me if you have any questions. Good luck.